I think it's good practice to start from the beginning sometimes. So I'll go ahead and just create a new HTML file inside of this basic HTML and CSS code. So you won't have this file already available for you. You have to do the same thing I do to get it. So we just, I'm calling this one box underscore model. And oh god damn it, I have caps in. So box underscore model. And I say .html because it'll be an HTML page. We have to have content before we can create CSS. So that's the go. And I say HTML5. And I'll call this the box model. And now I'm certain I touched a nerve on my computer because it's really not giving me, it doesn't give me much right now. Box, there you go. There you go. We have box model going for us there. And now I want to open this one up in the ports. I go open it with live server. We can see it right here to the right. There's nothing there. It's totally empty. And it's fine by me. Now, like, take any element. We can take a p element or something like that. And we just, we could make two of them actually. And we give them content. We could say Alexander Carlson on one, and let's say I'm a happy father of two kids. Wonderful kids. Okay. A proud father, happy father, you know, it could be anything of those because both will be correct. So I save this. We get the content up there and I'll zoom on it just for us to see. And when you know I zoom, I usually hold down control and just use my scroll wheel to zoom here on the page. Now I see this very clearly, and we will not zoom around the whole course. Of course, I'll teach you responsive web design, but it's a bit further ahead right now. So Alexander Carlson, I'm a happy father of two wonderful kids. Perfect. Let's discuss what we had earlier. We talked about margin, padding, and these kind of things. So let's make something happen here. I have something called styles.css down here, and I'm not going to take that now because it's further on in this lecture. We'll use that. So I'm going to actually close this one down, and I'm going to open another file called, let's call it BM right now because we want to have it for box model, and then .css. Okay, it's created. I'm jumped in it. There's nothing there. I don't have to put anything there right now. The first I would want to do is actually link to it. So to actually get that CSS to work on this HTML file, I need to link them up. So I can type link up here in the head, and I choose link CSS, and then it goes, what do you want to link to? And it suggests style sheet because that is the one I picked from the list there. And I want to link to a style sheet, so that's true. And then it asks for a hyperreference, so the reference to that style sheet. In this case, it's not style.css, it assumes too much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type, start to type B. I could also say just where I am. This is what I usually do when I start. And it's a good practice. Start with just a dot and a forward slash. It says where I am. That is what that means. So where I am is actually this box model thing that we said. It's in this part. It's not inside the image. It's not in the parent folder outside of the parent folder. It's here. So where I am, I'm going to start looking around at my siblings. Not inside of image or anything like that. It's looking around at siblings. And then it looks around at siblings, and what it sees is all of this, exactly what we see. If I click on image, it looks at the sibling image and goes into that. And then I can pick an image in this either. But it's not an image I'm after, and it's not suitable here as a link either. So let me go in here and just take bm.css. Now everything works. I saved. Nothing happens because I haven't changed anything. So let's go ahead and make changes. And I could make them a couple of ways. I don't want to teach you a lot about selectors right now, so I'm going to go ahead and use a very simple selector that you'll use most of the time, which is first giving them an identifying class that helps us identify this one. So let's call this name. And let's call this one text. So let's be very, very simple about this. I'll teach you a lot more about this later on in this lecture. So name and text. Now, to just make sure that things works as it's supposed to, I'm typing .name. Dot stands for class. So it means that this selector will go out and look for a class named name. And then I open my declaration block by using these. And then I start type my declaration inside of here. So we could, for example, I could go background color, and just to see that things work correctly, I type red. I can actually type the names of the colors. I don't advise you to do that. A lot of the times students start doing that, but it's much better to learn the color systems. But for this purpose, I think it's good. So I typed it, and you see that this get highlighted. So this is my name. The P tag covers all of this. Perfect. So let's make some changes, more changes here. I'll actually take all of this, copy it, and I take text, and I give that blue. And now you see we got both of them selected. I think it's a good idea at this point to actually keep them red and blue. And I know you want to like scream when you see these sharp saturated colors, but you'll soon understand why I did this. Now, I want to revisit the PowerPoint we had earlier, just to visualize the thing we discussed, this one, the box model. So we're going to talk about margin, border, padding, and content. And content really is height and width. So we have margin is the outermost thing that is between the elements. Border is the end of the element. Padding is inside the element. And now we have content. So how can we make a good likeness of this? I can actually imagine a very good example. Imagine you going to, for example, Elgiganten or eBay or any shop, Amazon. You go there and you want to buy a camera. Now, when you buy that camera, you might think that what does the camera have to do with this? But the words that you actually use here are it's very good to think about how you will ship the camera. So what you do is that you want the camera to not break when you ship it to get it shipped to you. So you put it in some kind of package. You don't put it, in an open big package where it's, falls around a lot and stuff like that. But it certainly is a package that is larger than the camera itself. So if we imagine that the camera is the content, it has a height, it has a width. Of course, in this 3D world, it also has a depth, but we don't have to think about that. Think about a two-dimensional camera. And then we put it inside something. Now that's something we put inside. Of course, if we can start by just talking about where does that thing end? Is it glued to the side of the camera, or is there space until the ending of that box? That space between where the camera is and the ending of the box, that's the padding. And usually we actually use padding there. In these cameras, we use padding. We put some kind of plastics or some other things that makes the camera not bump around and have a soft kind of cushioning around it. That's the padding. And then we have this cartoon or this outer layer of the box, the one that says that this is where the box ends. That's the border, right? So that is what we can think about border as. This is the end of the box. Now we want to ship it. So we know that when I get a shipment, I at least I hope a whole truck isn't used for only my camera. I believe other people order things as well and they put them on a truck together. But how far apart should we put them? Now I know they're like cramming it in there to get as many things in as possible, and that's a good thing for the environment and so on. But if we imagine that we were designing the space inside of the truck, we might not always want everything crammed. We want to have spaces between our boxes. So these are the margins. See? I think it's a good likeness there. So keep that with you when we are taking the next step into the Visual Studio Code example that we just had. I'm going to ask you then. We have a background color of red, and if I now take height, which is a property, and I say I'll give it a larger. I'm not going to use the right kind of units, the units you'll learn later on, because there are different units. I'm going to use pixels. I very rarely use pixels. I actually only use pixels for borders and in the specific cases when I use some kind of logos and symbols and so on. But in other cases, I don't. And you shouldn't either. And in fact, in a large part of this course, it's a total fail if you do, because it's not responsive at all. But for the very purpose of this video, when you're not really haven't been introduced or watched content about units, I think it's proper that we are just going to skip the unit talk right now and just write it in pixels. So I'm going to give it a height of 60 pixels. Now I'm going to give it higher. First off, I want you to recognize something before I say. Does Alexander Carlson and I'm Happy Father of Two have a height already? Yes, it does. It's because height by its very default is always there and it's set on auto. It actually looks at the content inside, and by just looking at the content inside, it attains a height. So now I have a height, and we can add just 100 pixels to it, and you see it's a lot more. And you remember I'm zoomed in. That's why I get this extreme result here. I'm zoomed in at 500%. So I get a height of 100%. And then we can go width. Let's go with 200 pixels. So that is our content. Now, if I may take the next step and add a border before we add a padding, because I really want to distinguish so you can see the space between the border and the padding. So let me do that by just adding border. And usually write this shorthand border. You can put a border on the left and a separate border on the right and another border on the top and another border on the bottom. Of course, but if I want to write in all at the same space, and I also want to address the issue of color and type of border, I can actually make a shorthand of this. Usually I'm against shorthands, but for border, I'm making, I'm breaking that rule myself. So 1 pixel, solid. I don't. Yeah. Well, let's see. If I go solid and take black there, I think you see it, but I think it's a better idea if I just increase the size of the border to 3 pixels, and I think I'm quite sure you'll see it right now. So right now you see that A starts here at the very beginning. We have a border of 3 pixels, and we have the height and we have the width of the container. Now let's, so why do we do that? 3 pixels, not device viewport. There you go. So we have that. And then now I think we're ready for padding. And I'll type padding here. It doesn't matter. I could have typed padding below. But since I'm going from the inside to the outside, I just want to make it easy for you to follow. So I'm typing padding. And now I'm going to pad on all sides at the same time. Even here, I can also pad on the left or pad on the right, up top and bottom separately. But I'm padding now on all of them. So let's go with 20 pixels. Again, pixels. And you see there is actually a space now created between the content and the border. So that's the padding. And that space also get this background color because this background color is set on the whole of name. So everything in here is still part of the element. Now, next step we'll do is take care of what's directly outside the element. So how close we allow other elements to come to this one. This doesn't really affect things inside of the element. It affects how close this element can come to other elements. It's the margin to other elements. So let's take a margin and let's give it, let's say 50 pixels. And now we did. It's almost centered. So just to make it make sure you don't believe everything gets centered all the time, I'm going to take 10 pixels. I could go with maybe 25. That would be more suitable. You see that there is actually now a distance here and here. And you might also see that the distance to the left is bigger. You know why that is? Because the body element that has all of this one, already has a padding on it. By default, it's applied. So if I want to change that, I could go to just use an element selector like this. The element selector that don't use the dot before. And I say padding 0. And I think it's padding, or it's probably margin I have on it. Yep, it's margin. So now it's equal to the top and to the left. You see? 20 pixels. So this is the distance. And you can see it actually affects down here as well. It says 25 pixels. It's going to change there as well. So if I go 35, you will see it will increase between these two elements. It doesn't only work with the side. It's actually a distance. How close can you get to me, basically? I think this is really the box model. And you need to know about this box model because now we'll step ahead and talk about how to work with it. For that, we got to know box sizing, and we'll talk about that in the next part of this lecture.